The last time I got my car serviced, I ended up getting new tires, and it pretty much went down like this. You can either choose this tire, which is good for driving in the snow, or this tire, which is cheap and will get you where you need to be. Yes. Son, you didn't answer my question. What I'm getting at is that I don't know anything about tires, but in an effort to not feel like an idiot the next time I need new ones, I researched everything there is to know about tires. Like, when was the first tire made? Does it matter which tires I choose? Why do some tires explode? Jerry's got your back, so let's get into it. Okay, let's backtrack, like way back. Before I made a fool of myself in front of that mechanic, nobody knew what a tire was, okay? 3500 BC, we just had wheels, which were initially made out of stone and then materials like wood and metal. However, these materials alone made for a pretty bumpy ride, so leather tires were then introduced. It helped a little bit with the bumpiness, but leather was still not an ideal solution because it wasn't fit for excessive use outdoors. They needed a solution, and so they turned to rubber and lived happily ever after, right? Of course not. When rubber was initially introduced as a tire option in the early to mid 1800s, it was a sticky, soft material that was pretty much useless at higher temperatures. It wasn't until this thing called vulcanization was discovered by Charles Goodyear, yes, as in Goodyear Tires, in 1839. Vulcanization is the process of heating rubber with sulfur that turned the useless, sticky, soft, rubbery tires into something more pliable and durable. However, the ride it gave was still bumpy and harsh. Enter pneumatic tires in 1888, which were the world's first air-filled tires. Pneumatic tires were a major breakthrough because filling tires with air allowed them to absorb much of the shock of rugged terrain, which leads to a much smoother ride while still being durable. 10 years after pneumatic tires were invented, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company was founded in Akron, Ohio, which still serves as the tire capital of the United States. Other breakthroughs that helped evolve the tire include tire treads, which were introduced in 1905 and protected the inner carcass of the tire while adding friction or grip to the tires. Balloon tires, which were low pressure tires that allowed for more road contact and therefore more friction and grip, which were introduced in 1923. DuPont industrialized synthetic rubber in 1931, which was much simpler and cheaper to manufacture. Radial tires were introduced in 1946, which redesigned the way the tire's carcass was oriented, making the carcass's fibers run vertically with the direction the tires ran. Radial tires increased fuel efficiency, providing the tire with uniform tread contact with the road, and were very stable at all speeds. Most cars today still use a radial tire design for these same reasons. So, how are tires made? The process of making a modern tire starts with selecting different types of rubber, oils, and other additives that affect the grip, density, size, and other characteristics of the tire. Once the materials are thoroughly mixed into a gummy, rubbery blob of goo, the materials are sent to different machines to form them into different parts of the tire. After that, the tire is assembled. So the first thing that's added is the interior liner, followed by the tire carcass. And this is important because remember, the direction that the carcass fibers run inside the tire affects the fuel efficiency of the entire car. After that, steel wires are placed in the sidewalls of the tires, which basically just helps prevent air from escaping the tire. Once these are all firmly pressed together, you have what's called an uncured tire. Curing the tire involves vulcanization, which bonds all of the tire's components and makes the rubber road ready by hardening it. This curing process also creates the tire treads by inflating the tire inside of a hot mold. What's interesting is that depending on the mold, some tires will leave this process much more fuel efficient than others. If you're anything like me, then you were probably pretty unaware that tires could affect your car's fuel efficiency. So why do they, and by how much? Well, tires need to overcome rolling resistance, which is basically a fancy term for inertia. So a tire with a high rolling resistance would force the engine to work a lot harder to get the axle to move, which would decrease your fuel economy. In most cars, 20 to 30% of your engine's gas consumption comes from your tires. Rolling resistance is affected by several things such as the tire's tread, its size, and the materials that it's made out of. Of those factors, tread is the most vital. It makes up about 30 to 50% of a tire's rolling resistance. Well, why? A tire without any tread is more likely to slip, which requires the engine to work harder to move the car, which hurts your fuel efficiency. But a tire with deeper treads does improve grip, braking, and handling, but it can also hurt your car's fuel efficiency because the car is gripping the road better, which increases that rolling resistance. A tire with shallower treads is the most fuel efficient because it's not too shallow to the point where it would cause sliding, or too deep which would cause excess friction and grip. The inflation of the tire also affects fuel efficiency. An underinflated tire causes the rubber to bulge, which increases the tire's friction with the road and hurts your fuel economy. Overinflated tires might help you with your fuel economy, but they don't come without risks. Overinflation can lead to a blown tire, which is not a pleasant experience, especially when traveling at a high speed. A loud explosion followed by your car potentially veering off the road is not worth the extra fuel efficiency that you'd get from overinflation. Overinflation also reduces the tire's grip and performance, which stresses the tire and can significantly reduce its lifespan. So how long will a properly inflated tire last? On average, tires will be good for about 50,000 miles, but this number varies by factors such as how much you drive, where you live, what the weather's like. But all things considered, tires should be replaced once the treads reach about 2 millimeters in depth. Okay, so I just replaced my tires. What happens to old tires? Well, 52% of them are burned as a fuel alternative, 12% are ground down and used in crumb rubber projects like on construction sites, 16% are used for various civil engineering applications, and 14% are ground down and dumped in landfills. Growing up just 30 minutes from Akron, Ohio, the famous rubber capital of the United States, I'm embarrassed I didn't know more about tires, how they affect my car, and which tires I wanted when I took my car in for service. But with a little bit of research and some help from the Jerry app, now I can walk into a mechanic shop and make an educated decision for which tires I want without having to guess. And you know what? That's good enough for me.
Jerry, the AllCar app that's got your back. Because we car.